first of all, I'd like to tell you my Twitter name is Shanghai Peggy, and JUCCCE is JUCCCE, if you're going to Twitter. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about mindsets and why changing mindsets, no matter how inefficient or heavy the cost, is so important to really shifting the entire behavior of our society and therefore helping us achieve a more sustainable world. And I'm going to tell you this from the perspective of a country that is resource constrained. I'm going to present it from a perspective of the future, because we have 1.3 billion people, and by 2050, the world will have 9.2 billion, so Australia will certainly not maybe be 1.3 billion, but a lot more people. So I'm going to give you a glimpse of what that might do to Australia. So I'm going to talk about the China dream. But first I'm going to tell you a little bit of story. When I was a young child, when China first opened up, my parents took me on a cruise on the Yangtze River, and this was before the dam that was built that moved 1.3 million people away from their homes and counting to build the world's largest hydroelectric dam. And one day, I remember very clearly that we took a turn up a tributary and then up another turn up a smaller river, and we all stopped and we all took a drink out of that clear stream. And I remember, wow, this tastes so sweet and so cool, and this must be what water should taste like. And I wish that China could all taste this delicious today. But instead, we have this. We have lakes and we have beaches that are overrun with thick green algae. We have rivers that look this bright red because of industrial pollution. We have my Shanghai Huangpu River overrun with 18,000 pigs in a month, dead virused pigs. And I know that China could be better than this. I know that we shouldn't have to live in a China where every day I look at my iPhone and take a look at the air quality index app to see whether or not I should put a pollution mask on myself and my children, and whether or not I should keep them at home or let them out to play. We shouldn't live in a China where when they move or go outside to travel outside of China for the first time, they ask their mothers, "Mom, why is the sky so blue?" One day, as I was a little bit older, I went to the Himalayas, and I climbed up to 5,700 meters, and I remember very clearly each breath was harder as we climbed up higher, but I could feel the tingling in my fingers, and I believe that's the chi of the mountaintops overtaking me, coming from the bottom of my feet up through my arms and through my fingers. And I remember thinking, this is the power of the Chinese landscapes. We have the karsts of Guilin, one of the most beautiful landscapes in the world. We have the stone forests of Yunnan. We have the magical bamboo forests of Anji. And I know that as we raise whole mountaintops to build, reshape Earth's landscapes to build these cities, that we're forgetting that the magic, the power of China comes from these original landscapes. Instead, we see this. Right? We see a world, well, this is actually next to my house in Shanghai, and we see a world where our children, when they go to the parks, see signs that say, "Stay off the grass." Right? What kind of world is this that we're disconnected from nature? Instead, we should see a beautiful China. We need to visualize this in order to remember where we come from. 10 years ago, when I was still living in California, in Silicon Valley, working in the internet industry, I had my first child. And I remember some of my best memories were of him running through my organic edible garden, a third of an acre. And he could just run up to the blueberry bushes and pick off the blueberries and pop them into his mouth, or run up to the snap peas on the vine and pick them off and put them into his mouth. And I wish that in China, children could have this love for the food and the earth that it's grown from. But instead, we live in this state of fear and mistrust, where I think some of you have already heard me say 22 tons of beef were discovered a month or two ago that weren't beef, but pork and paraffin, where lamb slices in our hot pot were not lamb, but rat and mink, where the frozen stuffings in our dumplings were not stuffing, but it was made out of cardboard. It wasn't meat, it was made out of cardboard. Where 6 children died of melamine in our milk, in our infant formula, and 200,000 more went to hospitals. What kind of world do we live in when we can't take our food for granted? So instead, we live in a world, again, some of you might have heard me yesterday talk about where we are building a Chicago and new skyscrapers every year, where we're building 170 mass transit systems over the next 20 years, where when you're in the subway system, sometimes you have the security guards not only make sure that you don't take a leap into the subway tracks, but they actually shove you in to the subway right before it takes off, right? This is what it looks like to live in a crowded world where human life, if I run over you and I kill you, all I have to do is pay your family maybe 20,000 US dollars, right? That's the value of a life. Where we're building 50,000 new skyscrapers in 20 years, or the equivalent of 10 New York cities in phallic symbols, right? This is the world that we live in. Where when I travel the world with government leaders, one of the things that my organization does is we train mayors around the country on how to build sustainable cities. And I'll go to these cities, and every single city has a model of what it's going to look like in 20 years from now. And all I see from a Western point of view is fake French chateaus and developments of fake British villas or mansions. And we clearly are copying things that we see from the outside, thinking that they are better. But this is not true. We're building inefficient infrastructure, right? But we have the chance with each new city to leapfrog to create new master plans of different types of cities. And this is so important that, you know, I understand your thought about trying to put our money and financially allocate our resources on the most effective things. But we have to remember the reason why recycling costs so much, or some of the current solutions cost so much, is because the infrastructure doesn't support it. But if we can leapfrog these systems to create new cities that support consumers to behave in new ways, in more efficient ways, that those costs come down dramatically. So we should still, as people, we should still teach our children to live frugally, and teach our children to recycle, and teach our farmers not to poison the peels of our fruit with pesticides so that I have to soak my grapes for half an hour before I eat them, or I have to take the peels off of the apples before I can eat the fruit of an apple. I wish, you know, when I see all of this building in China, the thing that strikes me is that most Chinese people don't yet see how beautiful a China we could be. So this is the fundamental issue. How can we show China before it finishes urbanizing in the next 20 years? Right? Before it becomes really, really expensive to retrofit, even if we have innovative technologies that come down the pike in 50 years, it's going to be too late. So we need to use the technologies and the practices that we have today to create a different mindset. So the interesting thing about China is that we have gone in one generation, 30 years, from survive to thrive. We've come from a place where people are worried about getting bread, well, actually not bread, but rice, right? I'm worried about toiling in the farms and toiling in the factories to providing education for our children, to maybe one day being able to get a passport and come to Australia for tourism, to worry about the color of the sneakers, right? So in one generation, right, we've been able to lift, as Bjorn said, 680 million people out of abject poverty. Right? My nanny, one of these people. But we're still wondering, we're still asking the question, what can a China dream be? What kind of life can we live? Every year it's been better. What should we aim for the next year? Instead, over these last 30 years, we've been drip-fed candied images from Western TV and Western advertising, and we're now putting in hotels with sometimes golden bathtubs, golden sinks, and even golden toilets. We're trying to copy the Kim Kardashian dream. This is the path that we're blindly following down today, and that can't be, because if every single person lived like an American, we would need the resources of 5 planets. By 2017, people estimate that China per capita will have the same amount of emissions, carbon emissions, as Americans. This is terrible. This is a China nightmare. A China nightmare means a global nightmare. So, how can we change the mindset today of this emerging middle class, 500 million to 800 million by 2025? JUCCCE, my organization, has been trying to accelerate the greening of China, to move from coal to a greener country. And one of the programs that we have is called the China Dream. I don't tell people I'm an environmentalist. I actually don't like that word. I tell my children that I'm a housekeeper. I clean the air, I clean the soil, I clean the water. And the China Dream is using the same language to touch the hearts of people in everyday language and show people that China can be more beautiful and align their incentives to all help in creating a sustainable world. We can't use fear-mongering language anymore. This is not working. Especially in China, we can't be talking about glaciers melting and polar bears and climate change when we're still struggling with daily needs, right? This language is not working. We need to cross the chasm of talking to the 10% who care, you in this room, to the 100% who care about their personal prosperity. We need to reimagine prosperity and reframe the language of sustainability to transform consumer desire. We need to embed social sustainability into new social norms, to embed it into a new national identity. We need to stop using these inane, arcane jargon of sustainability like low carbon transport. Sorry, this is for consumers, not to policymakers or scientists. To consumers, we need to stop talking about eco-cities, transit-oriented design, upcycling, collaborative consumption, climate change, ecological civilization, and harmonious society. I know you don't use that normally anyway here. We need to start talking about the China Dream. The China Dream of taking for granted safe food, air, and water every day. The China Dream of having vibrant living, whether you're young or old, physical, mental, social, vibrant living. We want to have a China Dream of livable communities where I can go downstairs to the subway stop, this is actually my life, and go straight to the airport or another airport, 2 different directions. I actually have another subway line being built right downstairs, so I'm going to have 2 subway lines at my feet. Walkable, livable, connected, convenient, livable communities. And we need opportunities to advance, to move forward while building upon our rich past, to build dignity for each and every 1.3 billion people. This is the China Dream, working together to create a better life, better quality of life for us and our children. So, in the last 2 years, or 3 years, we've been looking at behavior change research. In the last 2 years, we've been doing these co-creation workshops with people all around China, and even in some cases outside of China, bringing together sustainability experts, cultural experts, and storytellers, comms experts. The head of Ogilvy Asia Pacific's Chief Knowledge Officer, Richard Edelman from Edelman PR, or the Global Creative Director of Ci2013, and these types of storytellers helping us tell a different story. Teaching classes at Tongji University on China Dream. So now our challenge is, how do we visualize this? Chinese people are not yet innovative. So it's all great that Silicon Valley's innovative, but we're really struggling in China where we really need it, and we really need to implement it now before it's too late. Right? So innovation's great, implementation is an even greater issue, right? So how do we visualize it so we can just copy it? Because we're sort of good at that, right? So we are teaching, again, 40 to 50 mayors, vice mayors, government bureau heads at a time on how to build sustainable cities. We're going to show them pictures of social spaces, designing at human scale. We're showing them ecotourism. We're showing them sustainable living so that they can implement it at district scale. This is our government training. We are working with software developers to create game-changing citizen engagement software platforms that are in use today to let everybody showcase what you see and what you wish to see, so solutions. We're working with Tongji University to do this on campuses. We're working with Shanghai government to do this in Shanghai. We have a new way to eat program, nutrition education for primary school kids and by extension, their parents. How do we eat in a way that's good for you and good for the planet? In a way that makes sense for the Chinese diet, the shared dishes diet. So, and then the last one is really how do we bake these new social norms, this China dream, into the background of the most powerful visual channels ever, which is TV shows in China, webisodes, and events, right? So great to have innovation, great to continue to do R&D on that, but we need to implement them today while we're building these new cities. While the habits of these 800 million people aren't yet baked, where we can still change the trajectory of the mindset of the people that will, in large part, shape our world's future. So, a few takeaways. We must transform desire to create a sustainable, livable world. Desire creates markets. Prices will help change production. Second, the environmental movement has largely not been successful because it's very narrow. We need to broaden it to a more inclusive prosperity movement. The third one, we need a different story. We need better storytelling. We need to change the entire language that we're using, and we need different, more savvy visuals. We need to not impel people to change, we need to compel people to change. We need better visual storytelling by placing, we need to do social norms placement into these TV shows, into these ad backgrounds, into the events. So, please feel free to read more about the China Dream at juice.org/China Dream. There's a 45-page paper on our methodology. This has now launched conversations in the UK this March called the UK Dream. We did a workshop with the World Economic Forum in Mumbai in May. And next March at Occidental College, where Obama went to school, we're doing a TEDx on reinventing the American dream. So my challenge to you all here is, can Australia start the conversation about what the Australian dream might look like and reimagine prosperity here so that we can move a broader group of people towards action, towards doing something to create a more sustainable, livable world. Thank you.